The scanner should have rejected her ID immediately. 9 years dead, they said. But as the crimson light flashed and alarm screamed through Fort Davidson, one question haunted everyone. If Jessica Martinez died in the Arctic wasteland in 2015, who was standing at their gate right now? The answer would change everything they thought they knew about the Crimson Ghost operatives. Jessica Martinez wasn't just any woman. She was one of the last 4 members of the most classified unit in military history. The Crimson Ghost operatives. For 9 years, they thought she was dead, lost near the Arctic border during a mission that officially never happened. But she was very much alive, and she was here for a reason. Sector Alpha 12 would have been wiped off the map if not for her actions. Entire battalions saved by her hand. Operations so classified that her file was deleted from every database. Until now. The morning started like any other at Fort Davidson, nestled in the mountains of Colorado. The facility was one of America's most secure installations, housing classified research and training the military's elite units. Private Miguel Rodriguez was manning the main checkpoint, scrolling through his phone between vehicle inspections. At 22, he'd been stationed here for 8 months and thought he'd seen everything. The base was quiet, just routine training exercises and the usual stream of authorized personnel. Humvees rolled through the gates. Officers in crisp uniforms headed to morning briefings, and the occasional civilian contractor with their temporary passes. Next, Rodriguez called out, barely looking up from his screen, where he was watching highlight reels from last night's basketball game. Before we continue, please comment below where you're watching from, and don't forget to subscribe to the She-Force Tales channel. Jessica approached the booth, her combat boots crunching on the gravel. She wore civilian clothes, a faded leather jacket that had seen better days, dark jeans with worn knees, and a simple black t-shirt. Her hair was pulled back in a messy bun, and dark aviator sunglasses hid her eyes. In her weathered hand, she carried a military ID that looked like it had survived a war zone. Rodriguez glanced at her and immediately frowned. The woman looked tough, sure. There was something in the way she carried herself that screamed military training. But she didn't belong here. This was Fort Davidson, not some weekend warrior convention. "Ma'am, I think you're lost," Rodriguez said, his tone dismissive as he set down his phone. "This is Fort Davidson. You need proper clearance to be here. The nearest town is about 15 miles back down the mountain." A group of young soldiers nearby, heading back from their morning PT run, slowed their pace to watch the exchange. Sergeant Tony Walsh, a stocky man with a perpetual smirk, nudged his buddy. "Check it out, boys," Walsh said loud enough for everyone to hear. "Looks like we got ourselves a military groupie. Probably saw one too many action movies and thinks she can just walk onto a classified base." His squad laughed, their voices carrying across the checkpoint. "Maybe she's looking for her boyfriend," another soldier chimed in. "Probably some private who ghosted her after a weekend pass." Jessica said nothing. She simply placed her ID on the counter, the plastic card worn and scratched from years of use. The edges were frayed, and the lamination was peeling in places. Rodriguez picked it up, squinting at the faded photo. The woman in the picture looked younger, her hair shorter, wearing dress blues with ribbons he didn't recognize. But the photo was so degraded he could barely make out the details. "This thing's ancient," Rodriguez said with a chuckle, holding it up to the light. "When was this taken? The Stone Age? Look, lady, I don't know what game you're playing, but this ID is worthless. It looks like it went through a blender." More soldiers had gathered now, drawn by the commotion. A female corporal named Lisa Chun joined the group, shaking her head in amusement. "Poor thing probably bought that off eBay," Chun said, loud enough for Jessica to hear. "You can get fake military IDs for $20 online these days. She probably thinks it'll get her a discount at the commissary." The crowd laughed, but Jessica remained perfectly still, her expression unreadable behind her sunglasses. Rodriguez was enjoying the attention now, playing to his audience. "Ma'am, I'm going to have to ask you to turn around and head back down that mountain. And next time you want to play soldier, maybe invest in a better fake ID. Just scan it," Jessica said quietly. Her voice was calm, but there was something underneath it, steel wrapped in silk. The way she spoke, with absolute certainty and zero emotion, made Rodriguez pause. It was the voice of someone accustomed to being obeyed without question. "Fine, but this is going to come back invalid," Rodriguez muttered, sliding the card through the reader. "Hope you got gas money for the trip back to town." The scanner beeped once. then twice. Rodriguez expected the usual invalid card message. Instead, the screen flickered and went red. That's weird, Rodriguez said, his cocky smile fading. Let me try again. He ran the card through a second time. The same result. Red screen, error codes he'd never seen before. But then something else happened. The main security system's alarm began to sound. Not the general alarm they use for drills, but the classified protocol alert that Rodriguez had only heard twice in 8 months. What the hell? Rodriguez whispered, his face going pale. On his screen, classified databases were automatically opening, security levels escalating far beyond his clearance. Lines of code scrolled past faster than he could read. And there, in bold letters across his monitor, appeared 2 words that made his blood run cold. Shadow 07. Sergeant Walsh stopped laughing. Rodriguez, what did you do? I didn't do anything. Rodriguez shouted, frantically pressing buttons. The system's going crazy. Within 30 seconds, Rodriguez's booth was surrounded. Security officers came running from every direction, their radios crackling with urgent communications. The soldiers who had been joking moments before now stood at attention, their faces tense. Major Harrison, the base security chief, pushed through the crowd, his face grave. He was a tall man with graying temples and 25 years of military service etched into his weathered features. Harrison had seen combat in 3 different countries and thought nothing could surprise him anymore. He was wrong. Stand down. Harrison barked at his men, his eyes fixed on the computer screen. Everyone back up now. The major stared at Jessica, then at the screen showing her classified profile. Information was cascading across multiple monitors, clearance levels, mission codes, and classification stamps that made his head spin. Jessica removed her sunglasses, revealing sharp eyes that seemed to catalog every person, every weapon, every possible threat in the immediate area. It was the gaze of a predator, calm and calculating. Major Harrison, she said, nodding slightly. Her voice carried the casual confidence of someone who had read his file before arriving. Ma'am, we thought you were... Harrison struggled to find words. The woman standing before him was supposed to be dead. He'd seen the mission reports, the casualty lists, the memorial services. Dead. Jessica finished. I get that a lot these days. A black SUV screeched to a halt behind the crowd of soldiers. The rear door opened, and out stepped General Patricia Blackwood, a 4-star general with silver hair and a bearing that commanded instant respect. At 58, she was one of the highest-ranking women in the military and had personally overseen some of the most classified operations in recent history. Blackwood was flanked by 2 colonels, their faces grave. Colonel James Reed, a thin man with wire-rimmed glasses, clutched a tablet displaying Jessica's file. Colonel Sarah Kim, a Korean-American officer with a reputation for getting things done, spoke rapidly into a secure phone. Clear the area, Blackwood ordered. This is now classified. Anyone without alpha clearance needs to step back 50 feet. Now, the crowd of soldiers reluctantly moved back, but their eyes remained fixed on Jessica. Whispers rippled through the group as they tried to process what they were witnessing. General Blackwood approached Jessica and stopped 5 feet away. Slowly, with deliberate precision, she raised her hand to her forehead in a crisp salute. Welcome back, Shadow 07, the general said, her voice carrying across the now silent checkpoint. The entire checkpoint fell silent. 80 soldiers, from privates to senior officers, watched in stunned silence as their commanding general saluted a woman they'd mistaken for a law civilian just minutes before. Rodriguez felt like he was in a dream. This couldn't be real. The woman who'd looked like any random person was some kind of military legend. Jessica returned the salute with military precision, her movements sharp and practiced. General Blackwood, permission to enter Fort Davidson. Granted, Blackwood replied immediately. Then, louder, addressing her soldiers. This woman is Captain Jessica Martinez, call sign Shadow 07 of the Crimson Ghost Unit. She has unlimited access to this installation. Any questions about her presence are to be directed to me personally. Sergeant Walsh, who had been making jokes moments earlier, felt his stomach drop. Crimson Ghost, he whispered to the soldier next to him. I thought that was just a rumor. But ma'am, Rodriguez stammered, finding his voice. Her file. It says she died 9 years ago in Operation Frostline. There was a memorial service. I saw the footage. General Blackwood's eyes hardened like granite. Son, there are a lot of things that officially never happened. Captain Martinez dying in the Arctic is one of them. Her surviving what happened up there is another. Corporal Chun, who had been mocking Jessica's appearance, now stood rigid at attention, her face flushed with embarrassment. She had just insulted a decorated war hero. Jessica stepped closer to Rodriguez, her boots clicking on the concrete. You did your job, Private. That's what matters. Never apologize for following protocol. As she walked toward the base's main compound, conversations erupted around her. Soldiers whispered about the Crimson Ghost Unit, stories they'd heard in bars and barracks but never believed. About operators so skilled they were more myth than reality. About missions in places that didn't exist on any map. I heard they could take out an entire enemy squad without firing a shot, one private whispered. My drill sergeant told me they once infiltrated a terrorist compound and got out without anyone knowing they were there, another added. That's nothing, a third soldier said. I heard Shadow 07 once held off 200 enemy fighters with nothing but a knife and her bare hands. But Jessica heard none of it. Her mind was already focused on why she'd come to Fort Davidson. Somewhere in this base was intel she needed, information about a new threat that made her 9-year exile seem like a vacation. As she passed through the main gates, the scanner above the entrance chimed. For a brief moment, the digital display showed her full classification. Martinez, Jessica Call sign, Shadow 07. Unit, Crimson Ghost. Status, operational. Clearance, eyes only. Then the screen went blank, her information once again disappearing into the classified void where it belonged. Behind her, Private Rodriguez was already on the phone with his girlfriend back home, trying to explain what had just happened. But how do you describe meeting a ghost? How do you tell someone that legends sometimes walk through your checkpoint wearing faded jeans and asking you to scan an old ID card? You won't believe what just happened, Rodriguez said into his phone, his voice shaking. Remember those stories about the Crimson Ghost operatives? They're real, Maria. They're actually real. General Blackwood caught up with Jessica near the main administrative building, a towering structure of concrete and steel that housed the base's most sensitive operations. Martinez, she called, her voice cutting through the mountain air. Jessica stopped and turned, her expression neutral. The Arctic mission, Blackwood said quietly, glancing around to make sure they weren't overheard. What really happened up there? The official reports are mostly blacked out. Jessica was quiet for a long moment, her eyes distant as she stared at the snow-capped peaks surrounding the base. We saved Sector Alpha 12, ma'am. Stopped a weapon that would have changed the balance of power forever. But the cost? She paused, her jaw tightening. 3 good operators didn't make it home. The world thinks all 4 of us died up there. Sometimes I think they were right. But you came back. I came back, Jessica confirmed, her voice hollow. But Shadow 07? She stayed in the ice with the others. Blackwood studied her face, noting the subtle changes 9 years had wrought. There were new lines around her eyes, a hardness that hadn't been there before. So why are you here? After all these years of staying dead, why reveal yourself now? Jessica turned toward the building, her hand resting on the door handle. Because the threat we stopped in the Arctic? It wasn't the end. It was just the beginning. And now it's back, bigger than before. What kind of threat? The kind that makes my 9 years in hiding look like a pleasant vacation, Jessica replied grimly. I need access to the Crimson files, General. All of them. With that, she turned and walked toward the building, leaving General Blackwood standing alone, watching her go. The legend of the Crimson Ghost Unit had just walked back into Fort Davidson. And something told Blackwood that their quiet Tuesday was about to become anything but routine. As Jessica disappeared into the building, she pulled out a secure phone, a device that looked decades old but contained encryption technology that didn't officially exist. She dialed a number that hadn't been called in 9 years. Phoenix Base, a voice answered after several rings. This is Shadow 07, Jessica said, her voice steady. I'm back online. The line was silent for several seconds. Then, Shadow 07, this is Homeplate. We thought you were confirmed Kia in Operation Frostline. Death was greatly exaggerated, Jessica replied, a hint of dark humor in her voice. I need immediate access to the Crimson files. Priority Alpha. We have a problem. Shadow 07. You've been dark for 9 years. Your clearance was revoked. Your codes expired. Check your system again. Jessica interrupted. I think you'll find my access was never actually terminated. Another pause, then the sound of rapid typing. Jesus Christ. Your file. It's still active. How is that possible? Because some of us planned for this day, Jessica said. Now patch me through to the archive. We're running out of time. Because Jessica Martinez hadn't come back from the dead just to say hello. She'd returned because the same threat that had sent her to the Arctic 9 years ago was back. And this time, it was bigger, deadlier, and aimed directly at the heart of everything she'd sacrificed to protect. The war she thought she'd ended in the frozen wasteland was just beginning.